So today we continue our topic started last week regarding arrays of structures, and in particular we would like to solve some simple examples using arrays of structures. So as you remember, previous lecture we had a struct definition called student record, and it had more fields, not only those two fields, but for the sake of simplicity, making it simpler today. So today we have a simple definition, student record, that has only a string and an int. Okay? طيب. How does an array of such structure look like? Array, for example, with 5 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then each element is a struct of two fields, two members. Name and grade. Name and grade, name and grade. And how do we access each element? This is element number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if this is the case, then if I would like to access this grade in particular, how do I access this grade? This is, for example, S sub 2 dot G or dot grade, whatever the. Okay? So let's look at the first example, try to read it, understand it, and we're going to solve it together. So I'm not going to solve alone this time, we're going to solve all together. Given an array of structures, so we have an array of structures. And it is required to write a function. So what we'd like to write is just the function. Why am I emphasizing this point? Because in the exam or the quiz, if you are required to write a function, then write the function only. Don't write the whole program with the main, with the includes, and so on. What happens if you write everything? I'm not going to deduct points because you wrote the full program. To the opposite, this is something good that you're writing the full program. But if you write a full program, then there are more chances that you make more mistakes. So if you, I'm asking you to do the easy part. So why would you complicate your life and write a full program? So I'm only asking you to write that function. So let's think together. How do you write a function? First thing, the function name. I'm not giving you the function name here, so call it any simple thing. For example, this is called the print students. So I'm going to call it, for example, print A. So this is the name of the function. Does this function have any parameters? Does this function have any return values? So this is what we are going to read here. That takes an array of structures as parameter, and also the size is another argument. So we have two parameters. What is the first parameter? Array of structure. How do you write an array? Array, for example, S square brackets. But what is the type of this array? Student record. This is how it was defined here. So I'm going to make some space and then write the student record. And this is the type of the array. Then the name of the array. I'm not giving you the name of the array here, so you can come up with any simple name like this. but then we need the square brackets. This is not optional. What else do we have as input? The size. What is the type of size? Int. Why should it be int, not anything else? لأن عدد elements عدد صحيح. You don't have مثلا in an array 3 elements and a quarter. And what do we use to separate the arguments? We use a comma, not semicolon. خلاص? So you can only know this or remember this in the exam by writing code by your hand. Int size. And then the braces. Before the braces, what is the return type? Let's look. How do you know it is void? And prints. A function that does not have any output is a useless function. There is an output, but it is not returned using the function. The function prints the names of the students who got A grade or satisfy some criterion. So the output is directly printed on the screen. So we don't have any return value. And as Sharifa said, the return type would be void. The return type is void. Then we have those braces. For the start and end of the function. Now, what is the body of this function? What should we include? نبدأ إزاي نفكر إزاي? I would like to print the names of the students who got an A grade. For example, let's look at the previous example. Those are the grades. For example, this grade is 50, this grade is 60, maybe 95. 80 and another grade, for example, 93. What are the students that need to be printed? This 95 and this 93. How do I find those students? By just looking by my eye. What did I do as a human? I looked at all the numbers and I selected the numbers that are greater than 90. So similarly, I would like to write a program that goes over all the elements, يقرأ كل elements, and then decides which ones are larger than 90. So how do we do this? We need to read all the elements in the array. I use a for loop, exactly. So I'm going to use a for loop. How do you write a for loop? You have a quiz after tomorrow, so let's review. How do you write a for loop? We need to declare our counter. Yes. Semicolon. So here we use a semicolon, not a comma. Where do we use a comma? We use a comma between the parameters of the function. We use semicolon between the components of the for loop. I less than size. We put the termination condition. And then I++. Okay? So this for loop will process all the elements of the array. And then what should I do? Why do I need an if statement here? I am not going to print all the students. I'm going to print a group of students that satisfy a specific condition. مجموعة الطلبة التي تحقق شرطا معينا. If إيه بقى؟ I would like to say مظبوط. I would like to say the students whose grade is larger than 90. طيب, how do you access the grade of a student? Like this. The student number I dot grade. Sharifa, if S, and then square brackets I dot grade. ممتاز. Greater than. I said equal, then you should copy it. Greater than or equal to 90. Then what should we do in that case? See out, because I'm asking to directly print. Sometimes I can ask you to count the number of students whose grade is larger than 90. خلاص? Then you do another way. See out what? The grade? No. See out the name. How do you print the name of the same student who got that grade? نفس الطالب whose grade is larger than 90. How do I print his name or her name? It is the same student, so S sub I, same I. We are still inside the same iteration of the loop. So the I did not change. This is the same student, dot. Name, sorry. Something else? Semicolon. How are the students printed this way? They are printed all on one line. So the names are confused. What I think it is better maybe to print on different lines. Yes. يعني محسنات يعني. We are just trying to improve the appearance of the output a little bit. Are there any missing braces? Are there any missing الأقواس المعقوفة? Do I have to put them, or is it optional, or is it wrong to avoid them? It is one, but inside the for loop, I have two statements: if and see out. صح ولا لا? Inside the for loop, I have two statements: if and see out. So one student might think that I must have the braces. هل الكلام ده صحيح? Is this a correct reasoning? طيب, first thing, if you put extra braces, it is not wrong. It is never wrong. Of course, if you put them in the right place. If you put them in the wrong place, it is wrong. But if you put them in the right place and they are not needed, ما كناش محتاجين لهم, then in that case it is not wrong. It is not a mistake. But sometimes if you want to impress your teacher, you want to show the teacher that you understand, then maybe if it is not needed, don't put them. So I am telling you now that those braces are not needed. Type, do you need braces with the if? No, قولا واحدا. We're certainly sure that we don't need them because we have only one statement inside the if, which is the see out. So since we have only one statement, it is not wrong, again, it is not wrong to put those braces, but they are not needed. Type. Now my question, do you need the braces with the two statements following the for? No, why not? Type. Because those are not two statements. This is only one statement. Why? Because the see out comes inside the if. I said, if something, then do this statement. So all of this is called the if statement. The if statement with the result of the if constitutes, يكون, what is called an if statement. An if with the then part, which is satisfaction of the condition, تحقيق الشرط, with the else, all the three together are one statement. So even if I had an else here, it will still be inside this statement, the if statement. So inside the for, actually I have only one statement, not two statements. What is this statement? This statement is called the if statement. See out is inside the if, so it does not stand out as a separate statement. So what I said is that it is optional. It is not required to have the braces here. And this is the code. Finished. 4 lines. And this is all what you are required to do here in this problem. Let's look at the solution. Of course, you are only required to write this part, but in the lecture and for you to try it at home, I'm writing the full program so that you can test and check the results are correct. خلاص? So this is given. In a problem like this one, I will be giving you the definition of the structure type. And this is what you are required to type, to write in your code. And this is an example with a main function so that we verify that this program is working correctly. So simply, let's fill up this array with some students who got A and some other students who did not get an A. And then we have this header statement, names of students who scored A are those ones. And then this is how you would call that function. How do you call a function? You pass the array name as a parameter and the size as a parameter. Of course, the array name is passed by reference, as we said many times before. But the size is passed by value. It is only a copy. What is the value of size? It is in the previous page, so size is equal 10. It is declared as a constant integer. What is a constant integer? You cannot change it. You can change it only in one place, initialization, which is not changing. لسه بنعرفه at declaration time. Once it is declared, you cannot change it anymore. خلاص, because this is the size of an array, so it should remain constant. And then it is going to print the students each on a separate line. خلاص واضح? Okay, so let's look at the following example. Given an array, now you are going to solve this example with me. Given an array of structures, student record, so it is the same type of array. Write a function that takes an array of structures and its size as arguments, then computes and returns the average grade for all students in the array. So again, we are going to write the function definition in the same way as we did before. What name would you like to give to this function? Any name. Don't worry about this. It is a function that returns average grade of students for all the students. خلاص? Then let's call it the average function. Average students, for example. I'll call it average S. Does it have any parameters?
Yes.
Yeah, how many? 2. So we need the parentheses. We always need parentheses, by the way. Not only if it has parameters. If it does not have parameters, what should I put inside the parentheses? Nothing. Empty. Exactly. Actually, as I said before, maybe I didn't say here. If you put empty parentheses, I think the compiler is going to assume there is an int. If you don't want parameters, ممنوع parameters, then you should put a void. خلاص? Void parameter, void return. But anyway, you should always have parentheses. If you don't have parentheses, you are not declaring a function. It is a variable. All right. So what is the first argument? Let's look again. It is okay in your exam to look at back pages and copy some code if you think it is helpful. I'm not going to punish you for this. So here we write as student record S square brackets. Sometimes you'll find, for example, I'm asking you to write code. And in the previous problem, it was tracing code and getting the output. When you are writing the code, maybe you find a hint in the code that you are tracing. It is okay to copy it, but of course after thinking. Student record S square brackets, and then int size, open brace, close brace. Is there any return value for this function? What is the return in this case? Average. Do I write the name of the return value? No. The type. The type. What is the type of average? Not allowed to be int? Why not? Because the average you are going to. How do you compute the average? You are going to divide by the number of students. Sometimes you can get an int, but some other times you can get a floating point or a double. We can choose anything. I'm going to put a float. But a double will also be correct. Okay. Now, how are we going to compute the average? So the first thing is to, declare how is the average computed. So let's quickly remember, average is computed as the sum of the grades, exactly, over the size of the array. Because the size is the number of grades in this array. Type. Declare what? نسيت اسمك. So Latifa has already solved the problem on her mind, and now she's thinking, what do I need for this solution to work correctly? So what is the solution that you thought of and that made you think that I'm going to need a variable float that is called average to put the result here, to store the result, and to be able to return the result? What should I return? Maybe I'm not able to think correctly, and I'm worried the time of the exam is about to finish. One thing that I am sure that this function is doing is what? It returns, very good. It returns an average. So even though I didn't write anything useful in this function, but at least I put the header. لقد قمت بعملية مدمرة. طيب خلاص نرجع بقى ندمر تاني. At least you put the header of the function correctly, the parameters correctly, a return statement correctly. If this question has like 5 points, you can get just 2 points for writing this, even though you don't know how to compute the average. Even if you cannot compute the average, you don't know how to compute the average. وحصل حاجة تانية كمان، الريكوردنج راح، الخبطة دي دمرت الجهاز خالص. طيب نبقى نريكورد مرة تانية بقى، مش مشكلة. Even though you did not write anything useful, I said you can get 2 out of 5 points for a question like this. طيب, the next thing, قلنا we are going to, this average need to be declared. صح? How do you declare the average? We said it should be a float. semicolon. في إضافة. أيوة, initial value. خلي initial value when we start writing the code. So now here I'm going to write the code for computing the average. How do you compute the average? 2 steps. Number 1, sum the grades. Number 2, divide by the size. For loop. Why do you need the for loop? Because we have an array and I need to read all the elements in this array. I less than And then? And what are the separators between the components? Semicolon and semicolon. Then what? ايه بقى المعادلة؟ How do you write sigma in code?
Sum equals.
أيوة sum equals. Sum equals ايه؟
Student checker. SI vector.
S sub I dot grade. طيب this is the grade of student number I بس. This is not the sum of all the grades.
Plus sum.
ايوه plus ونعرفها فوق. ممتاز. خلاص بنكمل بعضها. Usually it is better, but what you said is not wrong, but usually in books we write accumulators like this. ايوه plus equal or sum equals sum plus s sub I dot grade. And we need to declare sum. So in that case we use a comma, not semicolon. مظبوط؟ comma sum. And we must have an initial value. ايوه equals u. طيب خلص كده ولا لسه؟ The average, we need to compute the average. How do you compute the average?
Average equals sum over size.
Average equals sum over size. And we have two statements. We put them in the for loop. مظبوط كده؟ مظبوط. We don't want to compute the average at each iteration. The average is after you finish the sum, خلاص, then you divide by size. So it should be outside of the loop. يبقى it is wrong. يبقى هنا it is wrong to add the braces. أو it is possible to add braces بس فين؟ here, but not needed because there is only one statement. So if I don't put braces at all, then this one statement comes here with the for loop, and the average is outside the loop. واضح؟ سهل. في أي أسئلة؟ So this is how our code looks like. Of course, there are different ways to improve this code. For example, I don't need two variables, sum and average. One of the ways of doing this improvement is EBA. So I'm going to try to improve or make it more simple. I don't need the average. I don't need this statement. But in that case, what should I return?
Sum.
لا sum بس لا. أيوة sum over size. خلاص. So with one less variable and one less statement, I was able to achieve the same thing. Of course, if you write the previous code, it is correct also. It is not wrong. But some students don't have enough time to think, so they write this longer version. Some students finish this code, for example, in 1 minute. And they have a lot of free time, so they start improving their code. Also to impress the teacher, يثير إعجاب المصحح. طيب, so let's look at this. This is exactly what we did. Average function. So please, when you solve problems, try first by solving by yourself before looking at the answer. Because if you look at the answer, you always think this is an easy answer, I can do it. But we did it step by step, as in the previous example, and here I declared an average. Let's look how this is different. Maybe I did it differently here. I cannot remember how I did it. And this is the for loop. And then, okay, here I call the variable average. Actually, I prefer to call, and I used only one variable, but I kept the extra statement. The extra statement, which is average equal average divided by size. Here, the word average, even though you can call your variables anything, but is misleading. يعني اسم خادع، اختيار غير موفق. No, it is okay that I write some code and then criticize this code. يعني أعلق أو أنتقد هذا الكود, even though I am the same person who wrote this code. And the average, I think average is the متوسط. But here what I'm doing is I'm using the average to compute the sum. Is it wrong from the perspective من سياق أو وجهة نظر C++? No, it is not wrong. You can even call this variable anything. You can call it حازم. But usually it is better to choose يعني a meaningful name from which you can imply the purpose of this variable. من الأفضل اختيار variable names بحيث يمكن استنتاج أو توقع الهدف من variable. This is why I called it here sum, not average, because it does the sum. Then we can have another variable, average equals sum divided by size, or just return sum over size without the need for this statement. Otherwise, the rest I think is easy. Here we are going to add up all the students, not only the 90 students, so all the grades are going to be added. We are not going to use the name field at all in this program, no problem. We are going to pass here. How do we call this function? We just see out the function. What does it mean, see out the function? ممتاز. It means see out the result returned by this function. What does this function return? It returns the average. So it is going to see out directly the average. But in the first example, I just called the function without see out. Why in this example I didn't place see out before the function name? Let's look at this function, because this function already see out, and this function does not return anything. It returns void, so it is an error to see out the void. You cannot see out the void. In addition, this function already has the see out built in. So this is how you would call a void function, just by its name. This is how you would call a function that is not void, that returns some values. واضح كده الكلام؟ شكرا.